Yes! Yes! Come to Papa!
I played Final Fantasy VII Remake for the first time, and I loved it. As a fan of the original and all the other media released about it, I was excited to finally play it for myself. Since I'm the only person on the Nobodies that hasn't played it, I decided to do something a little different for this video. I'm gonna break this bad boy down into the three most important elements of a JRPG: presentation, story, and gameplay. There's a lot of good, some bad, and some silly elements that make up this game. It still stands up 3 years after release, and has everyone excited for the second game in the trilogy, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Don't say I didn't warn you. Now, let's get started. From the moment you see the opening credits, you can tell that the team at Square Enix Business Division 1 was looking to meet the heavy expectations that people placed on this game. The look and sound of the cutscenes are gorgeous and quickly give you a powerful sense of familiarity if you're already a fan of the series, and I would imagine an epic sense of scale if you haven't seen or heard of Final Fantasy VII. This is easily seen at the beginning as we're introduced to our protagonist, Cloud Strife, former soldier turned mercenary who was there to provide his services to your local friendly eco-terrorist group, Avalanche. Here, you get a first look of how the game is going to play, and that makes a good opportunity to start with the presentation. The real triumph of this game is that developers really bring Final Fantasy VII and its world to life. This being my first game since the original release, I was blown away by how much it reminded me of the original. The instant the music kicked off, you knew exactly what you were playing, and if you've never heard this soundtrack, you're in for a treat. As you start your first fight with the guards, the action is all in real time with the ability to move around and hack away, which looks amazing and makes a great first impression. As you get further into the game, you start to fight more dangerous enemies and unlock more moves and magic with all the characters. The visuals of the combat just make you want to fight more and more. And they definitely accounted for this with the combat simulator sections where you get to fight to unlock additional summons and materia for you to use in the game. As far as I'm concerned, this is the best mix of visual and feel that Final Fantasy has ever had, and I say this having played Final Fantasy XVI earlier this year. That game might have had better combat overall, but Final Fantasy VII has my favorite mix of personal and team-based combat. More on the combat system a little later though.
Actually, you know what? Maybe I should go alone.
I'm coming.
The game looks and runs phenomenal on the PS5. The traveling around the playable areas looks good as any JRPG environment has ever looked. It's never perfect because the very nature of how Japanese developers like to make the world seem so video gamey, I don't have a better word for that. But this game does a great job of keeping you immersed with the seamless transitions to cutscenes. The way you move through crowds feels great. Collision detection and animations are amazing. The game menus feel a little old school, but not in a bad way. Generally, the camera is always right where you need it to be to frame combat, in-game cutscenes, and anything else you need to see clearly. The banter between the characters as you're moving through the story always feels perfect and never really overstays its welcome to me. This game is just as much fun to watch in motion as it is to play yourself. And then, there's the music. The most beautiful nostalgia bait I've ever heard short of the Super Mario Bros. TV theme.
We're the Mario Brothers, and plumbing's a game. We're not like the others who get all the fame.
The old favorites are brought back with flair and elevate nearly every battle and every scene. Masterful orchestral music and musical direction make it easily one of the best games to listen to from Final Fantasy as a franchise. This game looks gorgeous and sounds even prettier. Now, let's talk about the story. I am by no means an expert on the story of Final Fantasy VII. I do remember there being a lot of random battles though. So I heard that there were some changes made to the story in comparison to the original, so I'll do my best to explain. Feel free to correct me in the comments by all means. So the story was about Cloud Strife joining this ragtag group of eco-terrorists named Avalanche, who were looking to do some real damage to Shinra's ability to pull Mako from the Earth, Mako being the life energy of the planet. And so, as I understand it, Everything goes as in the original story, but slowly starts to splinter off as these things called whispers start to show up. Both reactors blow. Cloud still meets Aerith in the church after he falls. Cloud and Aerith still see Tifa in the cart heading to Don Corneo. They deal with Don Corneo and make it back as Shinra is knocking down the pillar for Section 7, and instead of Reno pushing the button, the Whispers help Rude hit the button instead. Aerith saves Marlene and leaves her at her house, which lets the group go after her at Shinra HQ after she was taken by Tang. Was Shang? I can't tell. They are not captured as in the original story, and they make it up to the roof where the president of Shinra isn't dead, but hanging on for dear life on the side of the building. But not for long, as Sephiroth comes to clean up what he left behind, and tries to take an extra bite and collectively give the fandom a brief heart attack by killing Barrett, which didn't happen in the original. However, the Whispers fix that error and he comes back to life. The group leaves Cloud to face Rufus alone, mostly, as Tifa comes back for Cloud. Something happens to Wedge, who was never supposed to make it this far, and he's taken by the Whispers. The group escapes, but witnesses a Whisper block party over at the Shinra HQ. They still deal with Motorball, but then go on to fight Whisper monsters and Sephiroth, and then end up on the road to the town of Kalm. Now that we've covered the story, some people were riled up by it, but I barely remember the original, so this was all pretty good to me. What I really liked was the way the characters interacted, both while you're questing and in cutscenes. The way Cloud grows accustomed to both Tifa and Aerith over time, and the way Barrett seems to just be angry and loud wherever he goes.
The reactor will stay online!
Is that right?
Boy, have you lost your mind, cause I'll help you find it.
And then, when the team comes together, it's all the nostalgia bait I needed to play this game. Now, let's talk about the boring part. Let's talk about the gameplay. First, the combat. The combat is why I love Final Fantasy VII Remake. The real personality of the game shows in the middle of it, and it keeps you feeling the strategy of a turn-based combat system while also keeping you active, engaged, and focused on the fight right in front of you. You can slow down the action and make your choices, or change the character you're controlling to better implement your strategy. The best part is when you get to pressure and then stagger your opponent, and then you can finish them off. The banter as you fight and switch characters can be a little repetitive, but it always feels natural. The combat always feels fun, but it's not perfect. Sometimes, there are attacks that simply stop your movement and you have no attribute to remove from your character. Frustrating. And boss fights can be a little unfair, and I think that the game doesn't do the greatest job of letting you have defensive options. However, this is still my favorite combat system by far, and I think Square Enix should certainly consider building on this system and style for future games. The leveling system I think is pretty unremarkable compared to the combat. Having you switch weapons to gain new attack commands is definitely a plus, but the AP system to gain additional materia and increase stats is not actually that remarkable if you ask me. Luckily, there's a way to automate the leveling for your new weapon so you don't have to give it too much of your attention. It gives you far less control over your progression, but it's a lot less fuss. Take it or leave it. The main quests are of course the bread and butter of Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it has to be said that the side quests, however, are not the greatest. Some range from pretty funny to just downright bad. The terrible ones don't add anything to the experience, and it feels like added padding for the runtime. Some are useful, like finding the missing chocobos for Chocobo Sam, but mostly forgettable side quests, in my opinion anyway. I know I may take some flack for that, but that's my take. If you like fighting tougher than normal enemies though, the side quests at least keep you busy. The combat simulator lets you chase power, and new summons, which I suppose fall under the same banner as side quests. Intermission with Yuffie introduces Fort Condor, a tactical side game that may interest you if you're looking for something a little different, but after one game I didn't find that much interest in returning. However, the rest of Intermission was excellent, as playing with Yuffie and Sonnen as a tandem felt like a brand new combat experience. Adding the synchronized system where Sonnen coordinates attacks with you and does enhanced versions of your ability was a great addition. The pace of the combat feels even faster, and I dare say felt even more satisfying, and definitely kept me coming back for more. Overall, despite its flaws, the combat really carries the game forward through the story, and while I feel some of the systems are a little old-fashioned, it works very, very well. This world feels fully realized when the presentation, the story, and the combat all blend together to become greater than the sum of its parts. And that's why I love Final Fantasy VII Remake. Bring on Rebirth. If you made it this far, thank you for joining me. This game was one that I was eager to play, and be sure that if you like this video, like and subscribe and tell us in the comments if I miss anything about the story. We will be there on release day for Rebirth. Remember, if you join a group of eco-terrorists to save the world from capitalism, nobody's watching.